Sebastian Niles is a fascinating individual. I hope you will get a sense of his very unique vantage point. He's a member of the C-suite of Salesforce, but he's one of those unique individuals who has many different roles. He's got lots of different responsibilities, legal, corporate affairs, you name it. So he's been a busy person here in Davos. So I thought we'd start. Well, thank you, first of all, for doing this with us.
I'm delighted. Thank you.
How are you holding up? How's your sleep?
Now I'm here. I'm excited.
But no, I think given that you actually report directly to Mark Benioff and you oversee so many different critical parts of this global organization, how has your view of AI and the business of AI and the opportunities of AI, especially globally, been affected by the different prisms through which you look at it, given your various responsibilities?
No, thanks for the question. And look, thanks for everyone. I know you have many choices of where you can spend your time, so thanks for spending some of it with us. Look, so I think stepping back, this is a very powerful and exciting moment because at least sort of on the Salesforce side, and as we look across industries and look globally, we do see AI at an inflection point, and that we are now in the agentic AI era. Many of you have been participating in the World Economic Forum, events. You may have gone on your app and you see this, little robotic, right, sort of our agent Astro. And I highlight that because the way in which sort of agentic solutions can end up having very kind of practical and meaningful, and then ultimately transformative, use cases across industries, across regions, and ultimately across society.
Is it agentic a candidate for the word of the week here in Davos this week?
I would say that for the meetings I've been in.
Is it a word, actually?
Is it a word? See, this doesn't always challenge sort of the topic. But, on this topic right now, but of what does it mean, right, to think about humans working with agents, meaning AI agents together, humans with AI agents to drive, right, stakeholder success, personal success, professional success, right, regional success. And I think those are some of the both theoretical issues, but deeply practical ones that we're seeing really across use cases, across industries, and increasingly, right, sort of across countries. And it's really building, can you go from the predictive AI, period, then generative AI. Right now we see agentic, AI. And just, it's going to continue to build at an incredibly fast, an increasingly fast, right, sort of pace of change. And that's the opportunity. But, when something you and I were just discussing sort of earlier is, maybe there's also this gap that we also have to navigate. Is there a gap between trust and innovation, right? Is there a gap between what are the opportunities, particularly sort of in the agentic era, but also how do you mitigate, right, the risks, and how does each region, right, explore these issues?
Yeah, which I was gonna go there, which is so take that frame and apply the regional, the global sort of outlook as you look out at the world. How do regional differences and also sort of ethical considerations come into your thinking on this subject?
Sure. Well, look, certainly at Salesforce, we've always believed that business can be the greatest platform for positive change and impact. And this includes around how can technological transformation, right, drive healthy and positive ecosystems of innovation, ecosystems of trust, right, ecosystems of stakeholder success and sustainability and growth and impact. And so when you kind of look across, right, these questions of ethics, of responsibility, right, of driving ultimately prosperity and growth in a way that is deeply inclusive, and let's talk about agents, right? So at Salesforce, we're not saying we're going to go release a bunch of agents into the wild. Why? Because you actually need to think about guardrails, right? You need to think about governance. You need to think about guidance. And so, for example, so when we think and work with, whether it's governments, working with industries, working with private sector, nonprofits, what have you, it's how do you take agentic level sort of solutions, but really ground them, right? Whether it's for us, sort of the years and decades of work around data, trusted guardrails, trusted sets of sometimes privately developed norms, because you can't always wait for regulation to bring forward responsible innovation. But look, we are, right, sort of we were founded in San Francisco, right, sort of we're a US, right, sort of leading American AI, American, agentic, AI company, but we've always taken that global lens,
40% of your revenue is outside the U.S., right? I mean, it's still a minority, but it's a big part.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of our strongest partnerships have been have been global, and that's also where some of the greatest sort of innovation, the use cases, right, the collaboration, whether it's private sector and public sector, whether again it also can involve nonprofits. It also can, as we look at small to medium sized businesses, right, and how do you create ecosystems as well? Look of entrepreneurship, right, and empowerment. We have, I think maybe we're the number 2 largest corporate venture fund. And so the way we kind of bring that lens to bear, whether it's on any of sort of these different verticals, is how do we bring the right kind of private sector investment or partnership to nurture, right, that innovation, right, that can come from anywhere, in the world. And we think it's going to be, it's really critical in this sort of agentic AI era to harness the ideas, right, the concerns, right, the opportunities that come from, right, people in specific regions, teams in specific regions, industries, right, sort of across a different set of regions. So it's a very exciting time.
So let's talk just very quickly about, we'll get back to the Gulf, but about AI governance. Were you at the inauguration?
I said
the Trump
back-to-back customer meetings here. So unfortunately,
there were a lot of AI governance conversations going on in
there.
Washington earlier this week. Yeah. But you obviously lead a lot of Salesforce conversations in Washington, and I guess historically AI governance has been dominated by the notion or the frame of the relationship between technology and consumers, and you've argued differently. Can you share your view?
Sure. So it's a good topic. So what he's sort of exploring here is this question of, to what end is governance, guardrails, and the like, right, sort of seeking, to serve. Certainly there's that relationship between technology, and consumers, but there's a broader piece, and on governance, the question of how do we align, almost create sort of this new paradigm for partnership across all of the key sort of sets of stakeholders. So that might mean, right, private sector, public sector, civil society, right, academics, regulators, right, sort of playing sort of a different role. But in a very deep way, too, though, what are the actual use cases within industries, within communities, within countries that will drive the right set of outcomes, right? That can unlock human potential, right? Yes, for companies, how do you drive additional revenues? How do you drive sort of additional sort of efficiencies? But more fundamentally, how do you drive the right kind of innovation that's responsible innovation, right? That gets you to the right place rather than having to necessarily wait, right, for some kind of regulatory overlay to grapple, right, with the opportunities, and risks. And that's how you have to future-proof, right, a lot of these sort of solutions and issues.
And one last sort of more wonky notion, but AI and data protection. How are your thoughts evolving on that?
So I think this is a very important point. So look, fundamentally, we have our Hyperforce infrastructure so that people can think about data in sort of very specific ways, but kind of stepping back from the technical measures, right? Whether it's artificial intelligence, agentic approaches, or more broadly, these issues of privacy, right? Of how do you control your own data, right? How do you then also, though, leverage, right, the right kind of data on the platform so that you get just impacts and results that are relevant, that are accurate, right? And particularly as we think about autonomous type of solutions that also can sometimes address, shortfalls in labor, right, in talent. And as we think of humans with AI agents working together, we're going to have to really grapple, I think, with these issues, but in ways that fundamentally see that some of our greatest challenges now, if we do this right, can be solved at a more rapid pace using sort of this technology.
Right. So I think one of the well-known issues with AI and many of these technology conversations is that the language gets muddled and word salads emerge, B2B word salads. So you've talked about, and Salesforce has this notion about AI unlocking human potential. Can you sort of break that down for us in very plain terms?
Sure. So look, a couple different ways. So certainly, when we actually think, say, of our Agentforce platform, so one of the things that we've been looking at doing is, what if you take, sort of, whether it's employees within a given industry, what if you take actually local communities, what if you take students, and actually say, here, build your first agent. Like actually go build your first AI agent using your priorities, using sort of your data and the like. And we've been doing this actually sort of across the globe. And the reason I give this example...
Have you built an agent?
I have built an agent.
What's your agent?
Well, I built two agents.
Okay.
And one sort of, some of those you'd be interested in.
One's professional,
one was like
one's personal?
financial institutions, compliance tech, M&A tech, all of this. But the other actual agent that was actually, that I did build, was more of how do I access information that I need, that questions that I or my family may have, and then actually have the agent start taking some action within guardrails, right, that I can monitor to drive things forward. But when we were having folks just really get their hands in the soil and start building their agents, you just see people come up with ideas we wouldn't even thought of. And they start to see how technology can be empowering, right? It can be inclusive, and not that it's going to be someone else that is going to have to develop this technology and then they just get sort of fed to them, but that they can really co-create it. And I think that element of empowerment and inclusion, it actually also gets to education and enablement, right? And so that the outcomes that we will get around these technological transformations can be deeply rooted in human priorities and sometimes look regional and global priorities.
So I think Semafor wrote today in our newsletter, there's a piece about one of the themes coming out of Davos this year is this exuberance on AI and not enough of the counter conversation. Do you agree with that view?
I would say you need to take a very balanced, right, sort of view about it. But I also think that when you look at different roadmaps that different countries may have, different regions may have, or you just think of different communities, sort of roadmaps that they have, in order to achieve whether it's prosperity, whether it's growth, whether it's tackling, right, some of the deepest challenges that different communities have faced, we actually need new solutions and new forms of partnership and collaboration. And that's why at a very fundamental level, we have to leverage this technology to drive, right, these desired outcomes. Now, look, are there risks, right? Are there gaps in sort of different sets of approaches? Absolutely. But the way we're going to tackle, right, those risks and tackle those dangers is by embracing responsible innovation and not by thinking that we're going to achieve the goals and outcomes that we as a society want to have by just sort of saying, hey, this technology is not going to be deployed or made available.
Great. So last question. You look out at the world from your Salesforce tower in San Francisco. How do you look at emerging regional AI hubs, and in particular, how do you see the Gulf region?
Sure. So look, we think that regions throughout the globe are going to increasingly want to prioritize what is their strategy, right, around artificial intelligence, around innovation. We actually, as you know, some of you may notice just yesterday morning, we announced that we're going to be expanding our footprint in the Gulf, specifically, creating a new regional headquarters in Saudi Arabia, based in Riyadh. And as we were sort of looking at sort of that opportunity, we said, wait, when you look at Vision 2030, when you look at kind of these different, and I think it's a good example of technology roadmaps, broader roadmaps, we saw, wait, what we're doing with Agentforce and overall technology is aligned with these goals of economic diversification, aligned with how you can think of kind of uplifting, sort of different, sets of, areas sort of within, the Gulf, but also across a whole wide, swath of use cases. And also, what happens if governments, in the private sector, really align to think about stakeholder success in new ways, not just customer success, but constituent, sort of success. And so, look, we continue to look at lots of different markets, and this is an example where we think again, the visions that are being outlined of how technology can be deployed and how you can, right, talk about economic diversification. How do you kind of think about small and medium-sized business? How do you think about a broader swath, right, of industries? And technology really has to be at the fore in a responsible way that thinks about data, that thinks about, privacy, but really drives the right kind of transformation at scale.
Great. Well, listen, Sebastian, you're one of the key kind of actors on these critical global issues. Really appreciate you spending a bit of time with us today. So thank you so much. Please join me in thanking Sebastian.